When Elvis Presley was finally laid to rest at Graceland, the air was thick with grief and disbelief. Thousands of fans pressed against the gates, but inside, something even more astonishing was unfolding. As mourners filed in, the crowd wasn't just made up of family and close friends. There were faces no one ever expected to see. Hollywood legends mingled with music icons, and even whispers of political royalty drifted through the hushed gathering. The mix of tears, gasps, and stunned silence set the tone for one of the most unforgettable farewells in history. And among those surprising appearances, one guest in particular left fans around the world absolutely shocked, and we'll reveal who it was later in this video. The day Elvis Presley was laid to rest at Graceland was one unlike any other. The summer air hung heavy, thick with sorrow, as the gates of the mansion became a gathering place for thousands of heartbroken fans. Flowers piled high, covering the lawn in vibrant, yet somber bursts of color, each bloom a small token of love for the man who had given the world so much joy. Inside, the atmosphere was quiet, almost surreal, as mourners struggled to process the reality that the king of rock and roll was gone forever. Every glance, every whisper carried the weight of disbelief, as if the world itself had paused in mourning. At the center of this grief stood Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, a man utterly shattered by the loss of his son. His voice trembled as he thanked fans for the endless cards, flowers, and letters that had poured in from across the globe, small comforts in a time of unimaginable pain. Vernon admitted that he was so overwhelmed with grief that he could barely recognize those who came to pay their respects. Even familiar faces blurred into the haze of shock and sorrow. His honesty was raw and heartbreaking, a reminder that even amid a sea of admirers and supporters, his grief was deeply personal and isolating. Yet, it wasn't just Graceland that mourned, it was the entire world. Across cities and countries, radios played Elvis's songs on repeat, candlelight vigils lit up neighborhoods, and countless fans wept as though they had lost a member of their own family. The global reaction was more than just admiration. It was a shared grief that united millions of strangers in silence and song. In that moment, the scope of Elvis's influence became crystal clear. His life had touched not just an audience, but generations. And still, amid all this heartbreak, there were moments inside the gates that shocked everyone present, and those moments are what we'll uncover in this story. Inside Graceland's walls, the Presley family held tightly to one another as waves of sorrow rippled through every room. Vernon Presley, still reeling from the loss of his only son, stood as a broken man, struggling to hold himself upright under the weight of grief. By his side were Priscilla Presley and young Lisa Marie, their faces pale with shock and sorrow, embodying the heartbreak of a family suddenly torn apart. The silence around them was heavy, interrupted only by quiet sobs, as mourners felt the raw pain radiating from Elvis's closest loved ones. It was a scene that captured both the intimacy of family grief and the enormity of losing a man the entire world adored. Among the mourners was Ann-Margret, one of Elvis's closest companions from his Hollywood years, who shared an emotional embrace with her husband Roger Smith. The moment was tender and deeply human, two people holding onto each other in the middle of a storm of grief. Ann-Margret's tears spoke volumes about the bond she and Elvis once shared, and though words were scarce, the emotions between her and Roger painted a vivid picture of love, loss, and the fragility of life. Their presence reminded everyone that Elvis was more than a superstar. He was a man who had built lasting, personal connections that ran far deeper than the stage lights ever revealed. Also gathered were members of Elvis's extended family and his lifelong inner circle, those who had walked with him through both triumph and turmoil. His grandmother, Minnie Mae, belovedly called Dodger, sat quietly in mourning, her frail figure reflecting the devastating loss of a grandson she had watched grow into an icon. Close cousins and loyal friends like Billy Smith and Gene Smith were also there, men who had been with Elvis through countless personal and professional moments. Their grief was not the grief of fans or colleagues. It was the grief of brothers in arms, bound by memories only they truly understood. As the family and inner circle came together in their heartbreak, it became clear that this farewell was not only monumental, it was layered with private sorrows and unexpected moments that would leave the world stunned. The funeral also drew the presence of some of the most influential names in music, men who understood better than most the weight of Elvis Presley's legacy. James Brown, the godfather of soul, was there, his larger-than-life persona dimmed by visible grief as he paid his respects to a fellow pioneer who had reshaped the sound of an era. Not far from him stood Sammy Davis Jr., another giant of entertainment, his sharp wit replaced with solemn reflection as he quietly honored the king. Whispers even swirled about connections to Johnny Cash's circle, a subtle reminder that the threads of Elvis's influence reached every corner of American music, from gospel to country to rock and roll. The sight of these legends gathered together underscored just how profoundly Elvis had shaped the artistic world around him. Within the service itself, Elvis's closest collaborators in music stood side by side, mourning not only an icon but a man they had worked with, laughed with, and lived alongside. Renowned guitarist Chet Atkins, whose talent had defined the Nashville sound, was there to honor the friend who had carried country music into the mainstream. Gospel great J.D. Sumner, his deep voice once harmonizing with Elvis on stage, now trembled with sorrow as he joined the grieving. Members of the Memphis Mafia, Elvis's trusted circle who had been with him through triumphs and struggles, stood in quiet solidarity. To them, this wasn't just the loss of a star. It was the end of a brotherhood, the silencing of laughter and late-night conversations that would never return. But perhaps one of the most talked-about appearances was that of Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's longtime manager and one of the most controversial figures in his life. Despite the complicated, often strained relationship between them, Parker made his way to Graceland to stand among the mourners. His presence was met with mixed emotions. Some saw loyalty, others saw audacity. To many, it was a startling sight. The man who had orchestrated Elvis's career, both elevating him to unimaginable heights and drawing criticism for decisions that haunted the star, now standing quietly at his funeral. That single image of Parker among the grieving cast a long shadow, sparking questions, emotions, and conversations that lingered long after the ceremony ended. Among the many familiar faces at Graceland that day was actor George Hamilton, a longtime friend who had often been seen at Elvis's side during more carefree times. Hamilton's charm and charisma made him a natural part of Elvis's social circle, and their friendship had been one built on mutual respect and shared experiences in the spotlight. Seeing him walk quietly into the funeral, far from the glamorous Hollywood settings he was known for, was a sobering reminder of how deeply Elvis had touched the lives of those around him. His presence was more than a courtesy. It was a heartfelt tribute from a man who had truly known the king beyond the stage persona. But perhaps no Hollywood presence was felt more deeply than that of Anne Margaret. The bond between her and Elvis had always been the subject of fascination, a connection forged during their time together on film and strengthened by genuine affection off-screen. At the funeral, Anne Margaret's grief was impossible to hide. She clung to her husband, Roger Smith, as tears streamed down her face, her sorrow echoing the heartbreak of countless fans who knew just how close she and Elvis had once been. It was a moment raw with emotion, a reminder that behind the headlines and speculation lay a friendship and bond that had stood the test of time. Yet, even in a day filled with sorrow and celebrity faces, one name stood out for the secrecy that surrounded his appearance: John Wayne. The legendary actor, known for his commanding screen presence, attended the funeral privately, away from the cameras and the public eye. His choice to pay respects quietly rather than in the spotlight added an air of mystery to the day. For those who learned of his attendance, it was a startling revelation, a giant of American cinema, slipping unnoticed into the crowd to honor another icon. The silence surrounding Wayne's visit only deepened the sense that this funeral was more than a farewell. It was a gathering of legends, with moments of surprise that still leave people talking. As the day unfolded, the list of mourners seemed to grow more astonishing with every familiar face that appeared. Fans pressed against the gates could only imagine the scenes inside, where movie stars, music legends, and lifelong friends all gathered under one roof to say their goodbyes. Yet, even with the presence of Hollywood icons and industry giants, whispers began to circulate about an attendee whose very presence carried a weight far beyond entertainment. The anticipation of who else might walk through those doors created a palpable tension, as if everyone sensed that something unexpected, something extraordinary, was about to be revealed. Then came the most surprising sight of all, Caroline Kennedy. Her attendance startled many, leaving fans and even some mourners inside questioning the hidden connection between the Presley and Kennedy families. Caroline, daughter of President John F. Kennedy, represented not just another celebrity, but a piece of American political royalty. Her quiet appearance at the service seemed almost surreal, a merging of two worlds that rarely crossed paths so visibly. It was a reminder that Elvis's influence reached far beyond the music charts and movie screens. His life and legacy had touched even the corridors of power. In that moment, Elvis's funeral became something greater than a farewell to a beloved entertainer. It transformed into a cultural crossroads, where entertainment icons, political figures, and everyday admirers stood side by side and shared grief. From gospel singers and Hollywood stars to renowned musicians and political heirs, the mix of mourners painted a vivid picture of just how far-reaching Elvis Presley's impact truly was. This was not just a memorial service. It was a gathering that blurred the lines between fame, power, and personal connection, proving once more that Elvis was more than a performer. He was a figure whose presence left an indelible mark across every corner of American life. As the mourners slowly began to leave Graceland, Vernon Presley lingered, consumed by the crushing weight of losing his only son. His grief spilled out in words that silenced those around him. Looking toward Elvis's resting place, Vernon whispered a heartbreaking promise: "Daddy will be with you soon." It was not just a statement of sorrow, but a vow born from the depths of a father's love, a declaration that he could not imagine a world without his boy. In that fragile moment, his pain was almost tangible, radiating from a man whose heart had been broken beyond repair. For Vernon, the funeral was not simply about honoring Elvis. It was also about facing the shattering reality of life without him. He leaned heavily on his faith, telling those around him that his son had always been in God's hands, and that even his untimely death was part of a greater plan. Yet behind those words of faith lay the raw truth of a father's anguish, a sorrow so profound that even the comfort of religion could not erase it. His trembling voice and weary frame were testaments to the unimaginable burden he carried. The image of Vernon standing there, clinging to faith while drowning in grief, remains one of the most poignant memories from that day. Tragically, Vernon's quiet promise would come true sooner than anyone expected. Just 2 years later, he passed away, the pain of losing Elvis too heavy for his heart to endure. Many who remembered his words at the funeral could not help but feel that he had indeed fulfilled them, that in some way, father and son were reunited, bound together once more beyond the veil of this world. It added another layer of heartbreak to the Presley story, a reminder that grief does not end with a funeral, and that love, even when shattered by loss, can draw souls back together again. If you've been moved by this story as much as we have, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another untold chapter of Elvis's incredible life. Give this video a like to help share his legacy with even more fans around the world, and let us know your thoughts and memories in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinions and reflections. Your voice keeps the conversation alive, and together we can continue honoring the King.